Chapter 20. Matt watched as Alex came out of the restroom and walked away. He ignored the tug deep in his gut. Instead, he focused on Rebecca and his sister as they emerged and headed toward him. Meeting them before they'd made it halfway to the tables, they stopped a moment. "Are you sure you're all right with this?" he asked the taller of the two. She looked significantly more tired than she had when she'd left for the bathroom just a few minutes earlier. His guess was it was stress from her father showing up. "Let's just get it over with." She started back toward the tables. She ignored her family and went straight to where Nick sat. He stood and kissed her nose. "Are you feeling all right?" He caressed one hand over her protruding belly. She nodded and dropped her forehead against his shoulder for a second. "Let's do this." She looked at him a moment, then turned to face her family. "Hello, Mother, you're looking fit." "You don't get to speak to your mother without acknowledging me first." Her father stepped between Rebecca and her mother. "I have nothing to say to you, you aren't even supposed to be here. I have no desire to see you again. Ever." She stepped to one side so she could see her mother again. "No you don't, you little bitch." Her father reached to take her arm, but Steve moved faster, stepping between them. "No sir. You have no authority over my Karen, and you will not be laying your hands on her." "I don't know who you think you are, but you have no business here." "Let me introduce you, Father," Rebecca said from behind Steve. "This is Steve Romero, Shaku of the White Mountain Channel. Not only does he have business here, he's doing exactly his job. He was asked to come here. You weren't. You are the one who has no business here." "I'm here to see my daughter." He did his best to sound indignant. "Your Khan was specifically told that you were not to be here. If he failed to inform you, that's between you and him." Matt spoke up. "For all we know, this could be a power play. He could have sent you here knowing you weren't welcome, and that you wouldn't behave yourself, so we would be forced to kill you. Effectively taking out someone he considers a threat." Matt caught the surprised look on Nick's face. He didn't know if this was true. He had no clue about the inside politics of the Yellowstone clan, but it looked like maybe Nick didn't either. "Now, you're in my clan's territory, with the stipulation that you behave yourselves. The White Mountain clan asked permission to meet here, not yours. If they have to finish a fight you start, that's all right." He glanced around the group, waiting for reactions. "The way I see it, you have several options. The one you choose will determine how things go here." "Enlighten me," the old man growled. Number 1. Sit down, shut up, and let this visit continue. Number 2. You leave, taking your family with you. Don't expect Mr. Hastings to be so accommodating again anytime soon. As you can see, his mate will be unable to travel for a while very soon. Rebecca's father looked her up and down, his eyes narrowing at her heavily swollen belly. "And the rest?" Number 3. You leave, leaving the others here, and they get to visit as planned. Matt had deliberately saved the worst for last. And your fourth and final option is that you can pick a fight that you won't win. What makes you think we won't win? There's 5 of us to 4 of them, and she's obviously in no condition to fight. His angry eyes flicked to Rebecca and back. Your math's off. First, I'm on their side. Second, JV here. He glanced at his sister. She may be tiny, but she's tough. Not only is she mated to their Shaku, but she's also an enforcer. Rumph. A woman on the enforcer team, so what? She's still a woman. Is that all? Actually, no. We negotiated how many security you were allowed to bring, not how many we were. We also have 2 more nearby. He didn't mention that Alex wasn't an enforcer. He'd seen her spar, and while he didn't think she was fast enough to make the team, she was strong and knew what she was doing. Matt was sure she could hold her own here. And why exactly would you be taking their side? You're supposed to be impartial. I assumed your con knew before he contacted me. JV there, that little girl you dismiss so easily? She's my baby sister. And I know it's not how your family works, but in mine, we stand up for each other. We back each other in a fight. We take care of each other. How dare you say such a thing about my family? Mr. Sutton puffed up and demanded. I don't know the whole story, but I do know that before Rebecca found the White Mountain Chanet, she was on the run. From you. That's not my kind of family. Neil's jaw slammed shut. It must have taken quite a bit of self-control to keep from making whatever cutting remark or demand he was holding in. He turned, stalked away and sat down at the table where he'd been. Rebecca watched him go without a word, then turned back to where her mother still stood. Mom, I'd like you to meet my mate, Nick Hastings. Nick, this is my mom, Laurelyn Sutton. While she was making the introductions, her sisters and brother came closer. These are my sisters Rachel, she motioned to the older one, and Roxanne, and the younger sister. And my brother Robert. It's nice to meet you all. Nick was friendly to his mother and siblings-in-law, and they were the same to him. My baby. Laurelyn had tears dripping down her face. All grown up and about to be a mama herself. I am. Rebecca slid one hand over her belly. Laurelyn hesitated. Can I have a hug? Of course, Mama. Rebecca stepped closer and let her mother wrap her arms around her and pull her close. Oh. My grandbaby doesn't like me getting too close, does he? Is it a boy or a girl? The younger sister Roxanne asked, her voice soft and timid. A soft smile found its way to Rebecca's face. I don't know. I decided I didn't want to find out. She watched her sister a second. Do you want to feel? Roxanne's eyes widened. Can I? Come here. Rebecca took her sister's hand and placed it on her belly, pressing it in slightly so the baby would kick back. She'd done the same thing to Nick at dinner the night before. The gesture had made Matt's heart ache, remembering how Connie had done the same thing. Oh! Roxanne jerked her hand away in surprise. Doesn't that hurt? Sometimes a little, but mostly not. Rebecca looked at her other siblings. Either of you want to try? They both looked like they might bolt if she did that to them, as they shook their heads. Tell me what's new with you all. Rebecca turned back to her mom. They visited for a while, catching up on what was going on with both of them, and the rest of the family, until Neil had had enough. I'm hungry, it's time to go. Neil pushed himself to his feet. We can meet again this afternoon. Give everyone a chance to eat, the comeback? Matt offered. Rebecca and her mother seemed nowhere near finished with their visit, and the younger girls were just starting to open up. No. I sat here all morning, I'm not gonna sit here all afternoon too. You're welcome to drop the others off. We'll take good care of them. You can pick them up when you're ready, or we can arrange to have them taken to your hotel. They're not coming without me. All right, do you want to get together tomorrow? Matt did his best to be accommodating. He didn't care if this ass ever came back, but at the same time, he didn't want them to go back and make complaints back to his con that he'd not let them have as much time as they wanted. We'll see. I just need to get out of here. Now. He glared at Laurelyn and the rest of Rebecca's family until they stood, said goodbye, and turned back to their car. The men stood around Rebecca, forming a protective shield on three sides of her as they watched them go. I don't trust him. Nick spoke first. Me either. Matt agreed. He's up to something. Steve narrowed his eyes at the older man's back, as if he could see through his head into his brain and figure it out. He probably is, Rebecca said, but I trust you to deal with it, whatever it is. She started to stand, then stopped, a grimace flashing across her face. Nick instantly bent to help, his hands on her waist. Are you okay? Did you pull something? Are you in labor? I'm fine. Rebecca stood with a tolerant smile. The baby just kicked me in the rib, and it hurt for a moment. Well, I don't care for him otherwise. Nick stayed at her side. But your dad was right about one thing. What's that? Steve asked from where he walked slightly behind the couple. It's time to eat. I'm hungry. And if I am, I know my little one is. He rubbed one hand against the small of Rebecca's back. She laughed. You're right. I am hungry. I wasn't talking about you, but I'll feed you too. Nick wrapped one arm around his mate's shoulders and walked with her back to Matt's SUV. Looking around, Matt saw Alex and Bobby leading the way back to the parking area, while JV walked beside him, Rebecca and Nick on his other side and Steve bringing up the rear. Matt knew his brother-in-law would be on high alert. His eyes and ears open for anything that might be a threat to his Karen.